day, our viewers, and welcome back to our channel, Alfonso the Rothschild tutorial. For some time now, we have engaged in trying to help our IELTS viewers, our IELTS hopefuls, that is, those viewers of ours who are preparing for the IELTS examination, and other viewers who are interested in learning how to analyze economic models, a skill which is undoubtedly indispensable in our everyday lives. IELTS, IELTS, stands for International English Language Test System. So it is a basic examination text, a basic English language examination text. That is a test of how skillful one is in the fundamentals of English language. This test qualifies Nigerians and other students from third world countries who desire to pursue academic programs in the abroad of their countries, especially in Europe and America, or who hope to further their careers in one or more of these countries. This examination requires skill in the analysis of economic models. I have often said this on this channel, but it is necessary to repeat it in order to accommodate those viewers who are just joining us. The IELTS examination includes a writing test, it includes a speaking test, it includes a listening test, and equally a reading test. The writing test has a section called Writing Task 1. Writing Task 1. This Task 1 has to do with the analysis of economic issues, the analysis of economic variables, using the basic tools for economic analysis, which we in broad terms refer to as economic models. An example of such an economic model is the bar charts that we have here. It is the second of such bar charts that we are analyzing. There are some basic or fundamental features of this kind of economic model that I would like to refresh our memories about once more. An economic model such as this has two axes. The vertical axis, which is also known as the x-axis. The x-axis. And is referred to as the dependent variables. That is, the x-axis contains the dependent variables, while the horizontal axis, known as the y-axis, contains the independent variables. Now we are talking about dependent and independent variables, and these are concepts that I guess I should enlighten you more on. Why are some variables dependent and others independent? And what, in the first place, are variables? Now, a variable is an economic value that is capable of increasing or decreasing, because a variable is a value that can decrease over time or within a period of time. It is also possible that such variables can be measured in units. So we can talk about what quantity of such variable is needed or is not needed, by what degree is the variable increasing or decreasing, and so on and so forth. Virtually everything in life is capable of being a variable. For instance, the number of Nigerian men who are interested in taking to commercial driving if the government begins to pay a monthly subvention of 100,000 naira to all commercial drivers. The number of Nigerians that are willing to take up commercial driving within such a period of time is an example of an economic variable. The number of Nigerians that are unlikely to take up commercial driving, no matter how much subvention the government decides to pay them, is also an example of an economic variable. The x-axis or vertical axis of an economic model contains the dependent variables. What are these variables dependent on? They are dependent on the values that are contained along the horizontal axis, that's the y-axis. These values are known as the independent variables. As you can see from this chart, the values we are talking about include cars, computers, books, perfume, and cameras. These are the independent variables. While the dependent variables are 50,000, 100,000, up to 450,000. 1,000 what? Pounds sterling. So, the x-axis measures the values we are discussing in units, known as pounds sterling. Now, as you take a look at the x-axis, you discover that the values increase as you move up the axis and decrease as you move down the axis. At the base of the axis, there is 0, and this 0 is called the origin, the point of origin, implying that all values begin from 0 and increase towards the peak as we move up the x-axis. As we move down the x-axis, the values decrease once more towards 0. In our analysis today, what are we studying? It says the chart below shows the expenditure of 2 countries on consumer goods in 2000. That's the chart is a measurement of the expenditure variables. That is the expenses made on consumer goods in the year 2010 by 2 countries. The units of value are measured in pounds sterling. The countries we are talking about are France and the UK. The economic model we are studying is an example of a multiple bar chart. A multiple bar chart. That is an economic model where a multiple of bars represents a given value. In this case, there are 2 bars for each of the values we are studying. The first value are cars, represented by 2 bars. 1 bar, as the key shows us, stands for France, while the second bar stands for British expenditure. And then computers, books, perfume, and cameras. Having said this, we are set to go into our analysis. Some of the bars are longer, some shorter, depending on the nature, depending on the magnitude, depending on the degree of the values that they represent. The higher bars represent more values than the lower ones, and the values, like I pointed out already, are represented along the vertical axis of the chart. First of all, the IELTS candidate has to understand the chart, be able to interpret the chart before you go into writing. I must remind you that this text, Writing Task 1, requires 150 word counts. That is, you are to write approximately 150 words in the examination. And then the candidate has 20 minutes to do the analysis as well as the writing. This is pretty short to some people, and yet just long enough to others who are better equipped. Back to the chart. Let us take a look at a glance. We say, at a glance, what is the chart talking about? What do we see on the chart? Now, what we discover here is that the UK spent more on consumer goods in the year 2010 than France. We also notice that both France and the UK made their greatest expenditure in the study period on cars. That's British and French citizens bought more cars or spent more of their incomes on cars in the year 2000. While the least expenditure on the part of the UK was on perfume, while camera took the least expenditure from French citizens. I take that again. In the period under study, 2010, the UK spent more on consumer goods than France, and this can be attested or proved going by the bars representing British expenditure. Cars, computers, books, perfume, cameras. The British spent more than the French on consumer goods in 2010. Both countries, however, spent more of their incomes on cars, while the least expenditure by British citizens in 2010 was made on perfume, while the French made their least expenditure on cameras. However, the most fundamental difference, or the most significant difference between British and French expenditure in the year 2010 was on cameras, where the British expenditure almost more than doubled that of France. On the other consumer goods, however, the French spent more than the British. The French, for instance, spent more than the British on computers and spent more than the British on perfumes. This is the analysis. The IELTS writer is expected to present this analysis I've made in the second paragraph. The second paragraph after the introduction. It is called the overview. Then after that, the analysis proper comes in, where figures are now attached to the analysis. Let us take a closer look at the bars. In the year 2010, the British spent approximately a little more than £450,000 on cars, while the French spent approximately £400,000 on cars. Again, in the same period, the British spent £400,000 on books, as compared to just above £300,000 by the French. And as regards cameras, the British expenditure, which stood at £350 in 2010, more than double that of the French, which stood at £150,000. And this is the most significant difference between the British expenditure and the French expenditure in the period under survey. On the other hand, however, The French people bought more computers at above 350,000 pounds sterling, a little more than the British, which spent exactly 350,000 pounds sterling on computers. In the same vein, the French spent 200,000 pounds sterling on perfume, while the British spent only 100,000 pounds sterling on perfume. So this is the analysis. And having done this, we are now in a position to put this analysis in writing. That is a report of the bar chart that we have just analyzed. If you have any question for me, please drop your question on the comment section or send your question as a post to me on WhatsApp using the number 091 333 That's 091 333 If you have enjoyed the analysis we've done so far, please give a thumbs up to this video, like this video, and subscribe to this channel as a way of encouraging us to give you more of these kind of videos. So see you in our next video, where we'll present a written analysis of the economic model that we have just studied. Thank you, and see you in our next video.